Joining us right now is a former FBI counter terror expert. It's a pleasure to welcome to the show, Tim Clemente. Tim, how are you?
Good. How are you, Doug?
Good.
Nice to talk to you.
Thank you for coming on with us. We appreciate it as we try to, make some sense of what is yet another senseless act. Of course, at this point, we have really very little to go on. The only thing that we know is that the FBI have visited the apartment of a Saudi national who lives in Revere, Massachusetts. The Boston Globe is reporting that the roommate, whose name has not been published, has confirmed that the apartment, his roommate is a 20-year-old Muslim who's in the country studying at a local university, studying English, and he comes from Medina in Saudi Arabia, and he's being treated at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, apparently from injuries following the bombing, and that's all we know. And the roommate says he doesn't think that his roommate could be capable of doing that. And that's it.
Hey, that's a common thing for people that are around suspects to say, because a lot of times they're not going to broadcast their intent, because that obviously makes it a lot harder to get away with what they're doing. I mean, obviously secrecy is a big part of any terrorist entity, and, the things we need to look for are, pre-attack surveillance. Was he at the site of the race for days or weeks beforehand, looking at the race locations, trying to plan where to plant devices and other things like that. And that behavior might not seem unusual to a roommate or anyone who knows the guy, because it just may be that he's out walking in the streets of Boston.
And the other thing, too, is we don't know. A lot of people are roommates, these apartments around Boston, because it's, college USA up there. There's so many colleges and universities. They barely know each other. They're not necessarily friends. They're just people who are sharing an apartment because of cost of rent.
Yeah, and also the types of evidence the FBI would have been looking for may not be things that are obvious to the roommate, too. I mean, it could have been communications. They might be taking cell phones, hard drives from computers themselves, things that he might have used to communicate with others. Devices themselves, at this point, I mean, I haven't seen any evidence, but from the photographs and video of the blast, they appear to be fairly primitive, probably a low explosive that was used. Most likely a pipe bomb or something like that. So it's not something that takes a lot of technical capability or would require, a great use of technical space to create or build the device.
And with that said, Tim, these bombs worked, and we've had many previous attempts, notably the Times Square bomber with propane tanks and in the SUV, that didn't detonate properly. So these might be primitive, but they are lethal and mission accomplished.
Absolutely. And, there was the Olympic bombing back in 1996, which was a pipe bomb with nails attached to the outside. When I say they're simple, I mean it's a lot easier to be effective with something that's simple. The more extravagant you get, I mean, building a nuclear device obviously is at the extreme, and you have state sponsors of terror, whether it be North Korea or Iran, trying to build those over a period of years or decades. Whereas something like a pipe bomb, very simple, a low explosive, contained in a containment vessel like a pipe, because as a low explosive, it needs to generate a lot of pressure before it has the strength or the capability to blow apart the pipe, which then becomes your shrapnel. So they're very simple. You can light a fuse, light black powder in there. The common ingredients of gunpowder or black powder, smokeless powder that are used in pipe bombs are not very hard to come by. So it's not something that would take months and months of planning to do. That's what I mean by simple.
What kind of forensics would be left behind? I mean, this is obviously, it's an enormous crime scene, and the police and the FBI are going to sweep the entire path of the marathon, which is 26.2 miles, but concentrating on the area where the two bombs went off. What kind of forensics survive a detonation like this?
All kinds. Every piece of physical evidence is there. There's nothing missing. The components of the bomb, whether if it was a pipe, if that was the containment vessel, every piece of that pipe will be there. It'll be there either on the street, in the buildings, unfortunately in the limbs of some of the victims. And then if there was any kind of a timing device, if there was a command detonation mechanism set up, for instance, maybe a cell phone, something like that, those parts, very, very few of those parts would be destroyed in the conflagration, the explosion, the literal flame and heat of the device, they would most likely be broadcast throughout the area. So the first thing the FBI or the local police will do after taking care of any injured or any victims, living or otherwise, would be to start to secure the scene for that physical evidence. And a sweep of the area would require literally a shoulder-to-shoulder movement where you're picking up anything that does not look like it belongs in that place, where, little electronic parts from a phone or little pieces of steel that are charred. And the only thing that literally disappears is the explosive itself, but it does leave residue on anything that would have been in close proximity to it.
All right.
And that could, and that's of great evidentiary value.
All right, Tim Clemente, former FBI counter-terror expert. Thanks so much for your insights. We really appreciate it. And unfortunately, this is the way we had to meet on this terrible story. We've got a lot more folks we're going to talk to in the next hour. We're getting into the financial aspects of this.